Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. And if you like this video, don't forget to leave me a comment down below and let me know which one of these recipes you're most excited to try. So for my first recipe today, we're gonna make my Thai soba noodle salad. This recipe has some marinated air fried tofu and some cooked asparagus. It's best served cold and it's super delicious. So we're gonna start by making a marinade for our tofu. So for the marinade, we're just gonna use some Bragg's liquid aminos. You could use coconut aminos, tamari, low sodium soy sauce, whatever you're comfortable with. And then I'm just gonna add some onion powder and garlic powder. This is super quick and easy. I use this to marinate my tofu all the time. So then I'm just gonna pour this over the tofu, and then we're gonna leave this in the fridge while we're making the rest of it. And then towards the end, I will go ahead and take it out, and then we will air fry it and add it into our salad. Now we're gonna boil our soba noodles. These cook really quickly, so after you bring your water to a boil, you're only gonna cook these for about 5 minutes, and then obviously you're gonna rinse and drain them, and then you're gonna set them aside. I usually run them under some cold water first before I'm adding them into a recipe that I'm going to serve cold, which all these recipes today are going to be served and are best eaten cold. Now our soba noodles are done. You could see here they're perfectly cooked, and we're just gonna drain those and then rinse them under some cold water and set them to the side while we get on to our next step. Now, if you already have some cooked asparagus in the fridge, that will work, or if you have a steamable bag, because I'm all about keeping it easy over here. I just had fresh asparagus in the fridge, so I decided today that this is what I was gonna use, but you can use whatever you have on hand. You could even add a different vegetable if you don't really like asparagus either. But I just really like the pairing of it in this recipe. I also like to cook mine with a little bit of a bite so that there's kind of like a little bit of a crunch texture from it. So after we boil that, we're just going to drain it like we did the noodles, and we're just going to set it to the side. I usually set it in the fridge to cool off while I'm waiting so that I can finish prepping the rest of the ingredients for this recipe. So now we're going to go ahead and make our peanut sauce. Now I'm going to start by adding some natural peanut butter, no salt, no oil added whatsoever. And then I'm going to add tahini. Now I know most people are used to making a peanut sauce with sesame oil oftentimes, but we're keeping this 100% oil-free and compliant today with the Forks Over Knives diet. So we're going to use tahini instead. And honestly, at first I was skeptical when I had thought to use this as a replacement in my recipe, but I really liked the way it turned out. My brother and I loved it. We actually ate the leftovers again for dinner tonight, and I made this recipe a few nights ago, and honestly, it just keeps getting better each day that it's sat in the fridge. So then we're going to add some maple syrup and then some Bragg's liquid amino. And then I have some fresh squeezed lime juice and then some fresh minced garlic. You could use the stuff in the jar, but honestly, I feel like this recipe tastes 100% better when you use fresh garlic. And then we're going to use a little bit of chili paste. Now, depending on what you like your heat level to be, you could reduce this or increase this. I felt like the amount that I used was just a little, like just enough for a little bit of flavor, but not much heat. So if you really wanted a little bit of a kick, I would suggest doubling, if not tripling, my recipe, which of course, as always, will be down in the description box below. So once you've added all those ingredients, you're just gonna mix it up, and you're gonna see that it gets nice and thick. It's the perfect consistency, and we're just gonna set that to the side, and then we're gonna let that chill while we move on to our tofu that's been marinating. So we're just going to toss our tofu right into the air fryer. You can see that it absorbed all of those flavors and all of that marinade that we had put in there. And I'm just going to cook this at 400 degrees for about 7 to 12 minutes. It just depends on your air fryer and how much tofu you have in there. I used half of a block of tofu, and it was the perfect amount of time. I believe I did about 11 minutes for this batch, but it's going to vary depending on your air fryer. They're all different. So once it's done in the air fryer, you're just going to take it out and set that to the side. And then we're going to get on to assembling this salad. We're going to start by adding our soba noodles to the bowl. And you can see here that they're not sticky or anything because I just ran a little more cold water over them after they had been sitting waiting for me to assemble. Obviously, filming takes a while, so they were getting a little tacky. But you can just add a little bit of water to them and they'll loosen right up. So then I'm going to use some coleslaw mix. This is just an easy way because I'm all about keeping things simple over here. But if you wanted to chop up some fresh cabbage and carrots and some purple cabbage, you could do that too. And then I'm going to add the asparagus and then that peanut sauce. I like to add the peanut sauce before I add the tofu, just to coat the whole salad really well before I add the tofu, just to leave it with that crunch. But obviously, after you let it set in the refrigerator for a couple days, the tofu does soften up a bit. But honestly, I'm totally okay with it because cold marinated tofu that's previously been cooked and sitting in a salad is absolutely delicious after a couple of days. We really, really enjoyed it, and honestly, I prefer it crispy or soft. So I'm just going to mix this up, and then we're going to go ahead and drop in that tofu. So that's it for this one. You can store this in the refrigerator for up to 5 days. It only gets better with time, honestly, guys. I absolutely love this one. Out of all three, this is my favorite. It's an entree, but it can be served as a side salad as well. Let's go ahead and get into our next recipe. We're going to make carrot ginger soba noodle salad. This recipe is really just an easy, quick, put together type of salad. Most of the work comes from just boiling your soba noodles and chopping up your carrots. Now, you could honestly just buy chopped up carrots in the bag, but I wanted this to look beautiful for you guys, so I wanted to cut longer pieces of carrots. So we're just going to add our soba noodles, some carrots, and some green onions into our bowl. And then we're just going to mix our sauce right in. We're not even going to mix that separately. We're just going to toss it right on top. So first we're going to add some rice wine vinegar, and then we're going to add some finely grated ginger. You want to make sure this is nice and small for this recipe. Then we're going to add some Bragg's liquid aminos. Again, you could substitute with what works for you. And then we have a little bit of chili paste, which you can adjust to your liking, a little less, a little more, whatever works for you. And then we're going to add some freshly grated garlic. And then we're just going to give that a good mix until everything is well incorporated. So for our third and final recipe, we're going to make my toasted sesame soba noodle salad. This one is a lot more hearty than the other two recipes, and for my mushroom lovers, this is going to be the recipe for you. So we're going to dive right into this recipe. We're going to turn our pan on medium to medium-high heat, and we are going to toast up some sesame seeds. Now, you're going to want to make sure you watch these because the process happens quickly. It's only going to take about 1 to 2 minutes. You're going to allow your pan to heat up before you add them in, and that's going to assure that this happens quickly. You're going to want to make sure you move them around as they're heating up because you don't want them to burn, and you don't want to leave them on until they're like completely brown because then they will end up overcooking and then you'll have more of a burnt taste instead of that delicious toasted taste. So it's super important you don't skip this step. A lot of your flavor is going to come from your toasted sesame seeds. And as you can see here, they're nice and toasted. So let's go ahead and get on to our next step. We're going to go ahead and dry saute our mushrooms. Now, I've showed you how I do this with my onions before, and I usually don't have to use that much water, if any at all. But with mushrooms, you're definitely going to want to have some water or vegetable broth on hand. and you're just going to add it as needed when the pan starts to dry up. And I'm going to cook these for about 5 to 6 minutes, and towards the end I'll go ahead and add in my garlic because you don't want to cook your garlic too long. I ended up adjusting this recipe and realizing that half of a package of mushrooms just was not going to be enough for the amount of noodles and other things that I was adding in. So you'll see here in a second that I decide, okay, let's go ahead and use the whole package. So of course, as always, I've revised my recipe and I have the correct ingredients in the description box below for you guys. So we're going to go ahead and just speed through sauteing the rest of these mushrooms. So now we're going to go ahead and add our garlic, as I mentioned before, and we're just going to cook that for about 1 to 2 minutes just to get it to release those flavors and incorporate with the mushrooms. And then I am going to go ahead here in a second and add a splash of my Bragg's liquid aminos. Again, you could use low sodium soy sauce, tamari, coconut aminos, whatever you are comfortable with, whatever works for your diet. So once I add a splash of that, I just cook it for another 30 seconds or so, and then my mushrooms are ready. So I'm going to go ahead and set those aside, and then we're going to get to assembling the rest of this recipe. So next, I just wanted to show you this superfood blend of Brussels sprouts, cabbage, kohlrabi, broccoli, carrots, and kale that I use. This is just me cutting corners because I'm all about making things quick and easy in my house. But if you don't have this available at your local grocery store, you could just cut up 10 ounces of your veggies fresh instead of buying a pre-packaged bag. But like I said, I just like to cut corners and make things quick and simple over here. So now we're going to go ahead and make our sauce. We're going to start with some tahini, and then I have some rice wine vinegar, some Bragg's liquid aminos, some freshly grated garlic. Again, you could use the minced stuff in the jar, but I just really feel like the flavors are so much better when you take the time to mince your own fresh garlic. And then we're going to add some red chili flakes. Now, you could add more or less, again, as always, or you could even use chili paste if that's what you have on hand. You just do what you're comfortable with in your home. You could omit it altogether. You could use sriracha instead. You can do whatever you're comfortable with to add a little bit of heat, or just leave it out altogether. So then we're going to go ahead and mix that up, and then we are ready to start assembling this last salad. So now let's go ahead and assemble this salad. We're going to start with those veggies in our bowl and add our soba noodles. And then I'm just going to give it a mix so that the two can kind of get well incorporated together. And then I'm going to go ahead and add my sauce from there. Now, it probably looks like I didn't add enough sauce because I ended up revising the sauce recipe. But as always, like I mentioned before, my revisions are always correct and up to date in my description box below. Sometimes I just film on a whim and then decide that I need to adjust flavors here or there, and I don't, go back and refilm it just because I'm a busy mom and I barely have enough time to film. It's midnight right now as is while I'm doing this voiceover. So after we add our dressing and mix that up, we're going to go ahead and add those cooked mushrooms and garlic, and then we're just going to give that a good little mix. And then lastly, we're just going to add in some freshly chopped green onions, and then I'm just going to give that another good thorough mix. And then we're going to add in the star of the show, which is those toasted sesame seeds. They give such a delicious nutty flavor to this dish. I absolutely love it. Also, spoiler alert, filming is difficult And you can tell here that my noodles are breaking up and a little mushy, and that's because I had made a ton of the noodles and so they had sat for a while. So I promise that your dish is going to be a lot more beautiful than mine because, like I said, the filming process is much longer than you expect, so things are sitting for a while and it's just a little difficult. And that's it for this recipe, guys. I really love the combination of the toasted sesame seeds and the mushrooms, and I hope you do too. You can keep all these recipes in the refrigerator for up to 5 days, and they only get better with time. As always, you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, or Facebook. I'd love to hear from you today in the comments down below. Let me know what you thought and which one of these recipes you're going to give a try. And if you do, don't forget to tag me on Facebook or Instagram at This Is Rael because I love to see when you guys recreate my recipes. And thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next one, guys. Bye!